MXTM Studios announces preliminary pre-production of the Continuance, followed by MXTM Studios mission statement. MXTM aka Pirate 1 or VJ Tsunami X. August 1, 2026. The fourth installment of the Pirate First quadrilogy. Some stories ask what survives catastrophe. Others ask what survives victory. The Continuance asks a more unsettling question. What survives us? MXTM Studios is proud to announce the beginning of preliminary pre-production for the Continuance, the long-anticipated fourth installment of the Pirate First quadrilogy and the next major expansion of the MXTM fictional universe. For years, readers have followed the evolution of a civilization imagined not through conquest, but through adaptation. From forgotten cenotes beneath the Yucatan jungle to autonomous oceanic colonies, regenerative infrastructure, sovereign AI, living architecture, and post-scarcity economics, each publication has contributed another layer to a shared mythology, a future assembled one impossible idea at a time. The Continuance marks a turning point. It is not simply another sequel. It is the moment the civilization begins telling its own story. The age of founders is ending. The age of inheritors is beginning. The Continuance explores the generations that awaken inside systems their ancestors designed but never fully lived to see. They inherit transparent cities grown through limestone caverns, robotic ecologies that maintain themselves, aquifers transformed into sanctuaries, orbital industries humming beyond the atmosphere, and institutions that have outlived the people who imagined them. Their challenge is no longer survival. It is stewardship. How do you govern abundance? How do you preserve freedom when scarcity no longer disciplines civilization? How do cultures evolve when artificial minds, engineered ecosystems, autonomous machines, and human communities have become inseparable expressions of the same living network? The answers are unlikely to be comfortable. As with every chapter in the Pirate First saga, the Continuance embraces technological optimism without abandoning moral uncertainty. Every breakthrough casts a new shadow. Every solution creates a new dilemma. Every paradise demands vigilance against complacency. The project will continue expanding the architectural and philosophical foundations established throughout the MXTM universe, weaving together themes introduced across numerous fictional publications, including the evolving cenote chronicles, the Pipe Dream Initiative, oceanic AGI settlements, regenerative engineering, sovereign institutions, and the ethical frontiers of post-human civilization. Readers should expect familiar places transformed by time. Cities that have continued growing long after their architects disappeared. Machines that have become traditions. Infrastructure that has become folklore. Laws written by people remembered only through archives. Children who regard today's impossible technologies as ancient history. Most importantly, the Continuance shifts the narrative away from the singular visionary and toward civilization itself. The true protagonist is no longer an individual but a culture learning to perpetuate itself without losing the curiosity that created it. Preliminary pre-production will focus on narrative architecture, chronological integration, civilizational continuity, visual language, environmental design, institutional histories, and the expansion of the shared timeline connecting the Pirate First quadrilogy with the broader MXTM Studio story world. As always, the work will remain deliberately interdisciplinary, drawing inspiration from architecture, systems engineering, ecology, speculative economics, robotics, mythology, infrastructure, and the enduring human desire to leave behind something that grows instead of decays. This announcement represents the beginning of that process. Blueprints will become maps. Maps will become histories. Histories will become worlds. And worlds, if carefully tended, may one day begin to resemble memories of a future we have not yet built. The Continuance is not a prediction. It is an invitation to imagine what civilization becomes when its greatest achievement is not that it endures, but that it continues to learn. MXTM Studios exists to build civilizations before it builds franchises. We begin with books because books remain the most efficient medium for developing complex institutional worlds. Through novels, essays, visual media, and long-form speculative design, we construct coherent civilizations whose technologies, economies, legal systems, and cultures evolve through understandable cause and effect rather than narrative convenience. our ambition extends beyond storytelling. Every work published by MXTM Studios contributes to a growing canon archive, a structured body of institutional knowledge that documents not only what happened within a given timeline, but why it became possible. Engineering, governance, economics, medicine, ecology, diplomacy, and culture are treated as interacting systems whose consequences unfold across generations. As the archive matures, it will become the foundation for the sovereign pathway, an operating system for participatory world-building. Readers will become explorers. Creators will become collaborators. Institutions, technologies, and civilizations will become configurable rather than fixed, allowing licensed creators to examine alternative developmental paths while preserving provenance and canonical integrity. We do not seek to replace traditional storytelling. We seek to extend it. Every novel, every series, every illustration, every constitutional draft, every engineering manual, and every fictional policy paper is another layer in an evolving civilizational model. Today's books are tomorrow's simulation. Today's canon is tomorrow's platform. The future of entertainment is not choosing between one timeline and another. It is understanding why civilizations evolve as they do, and giving creators the tools to responsibly explore what happens when their assumptions change. The pipe dream is visionary. The longevity principality is institutional. Super-Earth. Age of the Apes is evolutionary. The continuance is civilizational philosophy at cosmic scale. The pipe dream, the vision, the seed. The first articulation that civilization can be organized around health instead of extraction. It is aspirational and exploratory, inviting the reader to imagine a different civilizational trajectory. The longevity principality, TLP, the civilization. This is the mature constitutional and institutional expression of that vision. Here, the principality ceases to be an idea and becomes a functioning society. Governance, medicine, economics, ecology, culture, law, research, diplomacy, and infrastructure are all derived from the same first principle. The biological life well lived is civilization's primary resource. Rather than asking what if, TLP asks how does such a civilization actually function over generations. Super-Earth, Age of the Apes, the expansion. This is the civilizational dividend. The Centennials do not create the apex and the vanguardians because they suddenly become ambitious. They create them because the institutions, scientific culture, governance philosophy, research commons, longevity doctrine, and engineering traditions developed by the longevity principality have matured to the point where interstellar stewardship becomes possible. The Ape Project is not an isolated scientific breakthrough. It is the inevitable consequence of centuries of institutional refinement. The continuance, the continuity. Having extended civilization beyond Earth and beyond baseline humanity, intelligence itself becomes the central subject. The continuants inherit not only the technologies pioneered by the principality and perfected through the apex civilization, but also the accumulated memory and ethical traditions of humanity. They become the long-lived custodians and explorers of an ever-expanding cosmos. The pipe dream, the vision and invitation. The longevity principality, the constitutional civilization. Super-Earth, Age of the Apes, the interstellar consequence. The continuance, the post-biological horizon. Redeemer, the operating system of civilizational recovery. Pipe dream, the proof that the operating system can build an entirely new kind of city and way of life. The longevity principality, the maturation of that city into a sovereign civilization with its own law, economy, diplomacy, and philosophy. Super-Earth, Age of the Apes, the application of that civilization's accumulated capabilities toward the engineering of the vanguardians and then the apex under Mother's direction, making interstellar expansion feasible. The continuance, the era in which continuity itself becomes the primary inheritance, with engineered lineages, mission-specific embodiments, and civilizations operating across interstellar timescales. Redeemer isn't the state. It is the civilization's meta-enterprise. It is the consortium through which thousands of enterprises, public-private ventures, foundations, research institutes, rescue organizations, logistics operators, insurers, manufacturers, sovereign funds, and constitutional agencies coordinate toward a common civilizational trajectory. that makes the principality the political body and redeemer its ever-expanding operational ecosystem. What ultimately distinguishes MXTM Studios is not any single title, technology, or speculative concept. It is the emergence of a unified civilizational canon. What ultimately distinguishes MXTM Studios is not any single title, technology, or speculative concept. It is the emergence of a unified civilizational canon whose foundational architecture is now approaching completion. Over several years, our work has converged toward a four-part narrative arc that was conceived not as a conventional series, but as a coherent framework for world-building at civilizational scale. Together, the Pipe Dream, the Longevity Principality, Super-Earth, Age of the Apes, and the Continuance progressively answer four fundamental questions. How does a civilization begin? How does it organize itself? How does it transcend its planetary origins? How does it preserve continuity across deep time? Each installment expands the scope without abandoning the institutional logic established by the last. The result is a body of work that functions less as a collection of stories than as a living blueprint for an evolving civilization, one whose technologies, constitutional principles, economic systems, scientific traditions, ecological stewardship, and cultural identity remain internally consistent across centuries of fictional history. With the fourth and concluding volume now entering development, that foundational architecture is nearing completion. We believe this milestone represents the true intellectual asset of MXTM Studios. Individual books may become films. Individual concepts may inspire games, attractions, educational experiences, publishing initiatives, immersive environments, or entirely new forms of interactive media. Yet those opportunities derive their value from the existence of a coherent canon capable of supporting them all. In that sense, the quadrilogy is not the destination. It is the foundation. It establishes a durable narrative and institutional framework from which future stories, characters, experiences, and collaborations can emerge organically for decades to come without sacrificing coherence or creative integrity. This long-term approach aligns closely with organizations that view world-building not as a sequence of isolated productions, but as the careful cultivation of enduring intellectual property. We believe the Disney Accelerator's emphasis on visionary founders, transformative technologies, and the future of storytelling makes it an exceptional environment in which to refine and extend this foundation. Our ambition is not simply to create another fictional universe. It is to establish a civilizational canon capable of sustaining generations of creators, audiences, and partners across every medium through a shared commitment to coherent, consequential, and continuously evolving storytelling. The worlds we are building are intended to outlive any single medium. Today they exist as books, essays, illustrations, and speculative design. Tomorrow they may become films, interactive experiences, educational platforms, collaborative simulations, or forms of entertainment that have yet to be invented. Our objective is to ensure that, whatever the medium, the underlying civilization remains coherent, extensible, and worthy of continued exploration. We recognize that this is an ambitious undertaking. Building a fictional civilization with the internal consistency of a living institution requires patience, iteration, and long-term stewardship. That is precisely the journey on which MXTM Studios has embarked. We believe the next generation of enduring intellectual property will not simply tell compelling stories. It will cultivate worlds that invite continual discovery, responsible expansion, and meaningful participation across generations of creators. That is the mission of MXTM Studios. We appreciate your consideration and would be honored to explore whether this vision aligns with our commitment. As founders who are reimagining the future of storytelling, technology, and creative experiences, let's join forces. Respectfully, Martin Chartrand, founder, MXTM Studios. Subscribe. Discussion about this episode. Comments. Restax. Recent episodes. Sueño de Tuberia Reader's Digest. 7 hours ago, MXTM aka Pirate 1 or VJ Tsunami X. Sueño de Tuberia Part 6. 8 hours ago, MXTM aka Pirate 1 or VJ Tsunami X. The Longevity Principality. Trailer. 8 hours ago, MXTM aka Pirate 1 or VJ Tsunami X. The Longevity Principality 4th draft with revamped talk, 187 chapters, plus GPT comments and PF prompts. 23 hours ago, MXTM aka Pirate 1 or VJ Tsunami X. The Longevity Principality 3rd draft with full talk, 161 chapters, plus GPT comments, 27 minutes. July 31st. The Longevity Principality 2nd draft. July 31st, MXTM aka Pirate 1 or VJ Tsunami X. Pipe Dream. Reader's Digest. Notebook LM Summary. July 30th, MXTM aka Pirate 1 or VJ Tsunami X.